Hello and welcome to episode 88 of College Football Throwdown. I'm your co-host Alex Schmitz, and today I'm joined by my dad, Peter Schmitz.
Hello, Husker fans and college football fans.
Hello. We are here to do our college football playoff podcast. This is a college football podcast by college football fans for college football fans. And we are here today to discuss the conference championship games, the results, and of course the playoff rankings that came after, and what we're in store for the postseason of college football.
Sounds like a plan. Still love the sport, even though I bitch about it a lot.
That's right. Well, hey, I know talking about Uncle AJ, he's the type who can't watch games when Nebraska is bad.
Live. Yeah, exactly.
Well, right. Not just that, but he just says, he doesn't care about what other teams are doing as long as if Nebraska
sucks.
If Nebraska sucks. But I guess I've just kind of have that impartiality or just the love of the sport that, I can get into a good game.
Exactly.
No matter who's playing.
I agree. And you need to be able to enjoy, the sport for the sake of the sport and being impressed by success. I feel that way about volleyball now. I've become such an avid Nebraska volleyball fan, and of course it's now, what do I say, tournament time for volleyball. So we're into the Sweet 16 now as we do this podcast. Nebraska is lucky enough to be one of those 16 teams, but just watching great volleyball, being able to watch, an incredible 5-set match between Minnesota and Creighton, for example, this past weekend was just enjoyable for the pure sport of it, right? And enjoying great volleyball and great performance. Mm-hmm. Same for college football. I mean, that's what I love about college sports is that passion element that comes. And the doer, now or never kind of mentality of it.
Totally agree. So before we get into the discussion of those games, I believe you have our traditional beverage to crack for us.
I do, and I'm drinking your mother's favorite beer, one that happened to be in the fridge, and it's one of her last ones. So I'm sure she's really thrilled with me right now, but it's called Grain Belt Blue, and Grain Belt is also produced by that same brewery that I have grown fond of from New Ulm, Minnesota, of the August. Oh gosh, now I'm forgetting it. Anyway, Grain Belt is the name of the brand, and it's a blueberry beer. It's about 5.4% alcohol, so it's not super high end alcohol content wise, but as a fruit beer go, it's really a smooth beer and just is wonderful flavor, and so one for a lot of I think women would probably like it because it's not a complete beer if you know what I mean, with that nice fruit flavor, but it's a heck of a smooth beverage as you drink it down. So August Shell. Thank you. I was just trying to find the name. August Shell Brewery makes it, but it's part of the Grain Belt brand.
All right.
So here we go. Are we ready?
Yep.
Let's do this thing. All right.
Ooh.
Here we go.
Sounded good.
Cheers to you, son. Cheers to you. Are you drinking anything tonight, or you're going without? You're being good since it's a school night.
School night. How old do you think I am? Still thinks I'm in college over here.
Apparently. Well, no, if it was a college, you'd probably still be drinking. I was thinking more about high school, actually. But...
Wow, geez, you're we're about to transition decades here, but you're back in the last decade.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. All right.
Maybe.
So I suppose before we dive into, well, what do you think? Should we talk about the conference championship games first or the coaching carousel first?
I think the championship games first.
All right. Get right to the good stuff.
Yes.
I had the chance to watch bits and pieces of pretty much all the games this weekend. Some of them I tuned out of once they kind of got out of hand. But we gave predictions for all of the games last week. So let's start with the game that aired first, which is the Big 12 championship game, Oklahoma Baylor. You predicted.
Well, wait a minute. Oklahoma Baylor. No. The first game
Oh,
was
the Pac 12.
12.
I'm sorry. You're right. That was the first one. We both predicted that Oregon would win, or I'm sorry, Utah would win, rather. I predicted 42-21, whereas you predicted 31-21. But then the final score ended up being 37 Oregon, 15 Utah.
Yes.
So kind of fun that we got off to the first game of the conference championships and it was an upset.
Right. Well, and we talked about what it would take for Oregon to win and how detrimental that would be to the Pac-12 in terms of their chances of being involved in the playoff and all that sort of stuff. And sure as shoot, it pretty much played out just like we were saying. Oh, I hope it doesn't work out this way, but by golly, that's the way it worked out. And great for Oregon, of course, but very disappointing for the Pac-12 to again be out on the outside looking in, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, it was an interesting game, for sure. Utah showed a lot of capability on offense, or I'm sorry, Oregon did. Oregon showed a lot of capability on offense. Obviously with my score 42-21, I was predicting a more high scoring kind of Pac-12-ish game.
Right.
But it didn't quite go that way.
Well, and really it was somewhat close until a late score kind of created some separation for Oregon. I mean, Utah, had made it interesting, and it looked like they might come back, but then Oregon had a big play, and all of a sudden it was back to 14 points or whatever, and it looked less likely.
Yeah, actually, I remember I texted you like, "Oh, Oregon's keeping this interesting," and that was right before they got like a big score,
that big play. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, so that's how that one had gone.
Interesting that they choose to do that on Friday night. I mean, I wonder what their actual audience is, television and otherwise. I noticed that I don't think the stands were full, that they had empty seats.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that one. I think the Pac-12 commissioner is taking some heat for these late Pac-12 games because it's late here. If it's at night here, then it's super late for like East Coast.
Oh, right. So no one's watching, right? Other than the West Coasters, and frankly, the West Coasters don't give a shit about their own sport. They don't. There's such apathy. Even if you're a great team out there, it's hard to sustain attendance at Pac-12 sporting events. It blows me away. They moniker themselves as the Conference of Champions because they win more national championships across all collegiate sports than any other conference, because a lot of the Olympic sports are dominated by the Stanfords, UCLA's, USC's, and Cal's of the world. They're just dominated by them. Oregon, track and field, that sort of thing. But yet, as far as actually having, rabid fandoms, they just don't have a lot of schools that approach that.
Yeah, well, and in terms of football, it certainly doesn't help that Oregon has kind of been the team they've rallied behind in recent years, but they've fallen on hard times, and USC has been struggling for even longer.
Mess,
yeah, so their perennial powers are not in gear right now.
Right, and UCLA, which used to be one of the powers. I mean, it used to be about UCLA and USC, right? And this is probably when you were really young, but UCLA just has never, since then, for the last 20 years, really 20 plus years, UCLA really hasn't made the commitment to any coach for them to truly be successful.
Yep, very true, very true. So now we can move on to that Baylor-Oklahoma game that I started to talk about. So for that one, you predicted that Oklahoma would win. You predicted. I'm trying to read this thing here. There you go.
Yes.
48-28 was your
Yes.
planned victory
I thought,
over
yeah,
Baylor.
I thought, I thought Oklahoma would, it would be close, but then eventually Oklahoma would kind of have a play or something and explode and end up with a comfortable margin. Obviously, that didn't happen.
Yeah. Well, and then this was the one where I decided to be a little different and predict an upset, thinking that Baylor would be able to avenge their previous loss because, they were up significantly in their first meeting in the regular season. And so I
Right.
predicted a 52-45 shootout victory for Baylor. And while
Hmm.
the margin of victory was correct, it was a much lower scoring game, and Oklahoma was the one that eventually won with a score of
Right.
30-23 in overtime over Baylor.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say. It ended up being, it was tied like the whole game. Like, I mean, one team would score and then the other one would score. Just seemed like they were tied at 13. They were tied at 20 or whatever. And they just kept, and then 23 and 24 or whatever. So it just seemed like it was always tied until regulation. Then they're tied at the end of regulation. And then in overtime, obviously they Oklahoma separated, but a very, very closely competed contest.
Yeah. Well, and it's, in my opinion, if Baylor actually had healthy quarterbacks, I think that they would have won the game. But they were back on their third string guy
Hmm.
at one point. Although the third string guy, I think, performed pretty well
Yeah.
because I think both the first and the second string guys were kind of playing hurt. Um, but but yeah, that was definitely a major factor in the game. But Oklahoma was also beat up in terms of injuries, so that played a factor in it as well.
Yep. Yep. Well, and it's just surprising to me, watching the teams play each other. I mean, just the 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 dichotomy of defense in that league versus other leagues that I watch, Big Ten, SEC. I don't watch as much Pac-12, so I can't say quite as much of it, whether that's that much different. But just the way they call pass interference, the way they handle the holding at the offensive line, I mean, it's just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Well, and one thing the commentators were making a point of, and I tended to agree, because as you could tell from my points that I was predicting of 52-45, I was kind of expecting a Big 12 shootout.
right.
But in comparison to last year, where Oklahoma had an amazing offense but a terrible defense, their defense has made some serious strides this year, and Baylor's as well. So it was kind of a mix of defense and offense in the
It
game.
was. It was. Yep. Yep. And there were some very critical, pass interference penalties and the whole just calls in general that were significant. And I'm my recollection is that most of them were probably right, but they were close calls or they let them be physical in situations that I was shocked they allowed it to happen. So some interesting things there for the Big 12.
Right.
So
Well,
like that game was ref different than the whole season.
right. Well, and wasn't it the LSU Georgia game where the refs were really letting them be aggressive? I remember,
Yes.
yeah, there were some things that definitely would have been called pass interference in other leagues, but they were letting it kind of slide, it felt like.
Yep. And I feel like that's been the case in the SEC for a number of years that they allow more physicality on their out of their defenses than other leagues, and I think that's the way it should be. That's the way football used to be played. So in this case, I would side with the SEC and say I wish that more leagues would govern their rule observation the way they do.
I did see a thing that apparently there'll be Pac-12 refs in the national championship game this year.
Oh my, that'll be interesting. Okay.
So yeah, that was just see that play out. But yeah, that was a good, entertaining game on Saturday we got to watch.
Yeah.
And then there was the Big 12 champion or the Big 10 championship game rather, Ohio State versus Wisconsin. and we both predicted an Ohio State victory. I said 38-24. You said 52-17.
Hmm.
And
You were right.
yep, well, yeah, and the final score would be 34-21. So yeah,
Hmm.
pretty close to my score.
Yep.
Although it's worth noting that at halftime, Wisconsin was up 21-7.
Yeah.
And it was quite a dichotomy between the first half and the second half of the game.
It sure was, and I was watching that first half, and I was seeing demeanor from Ohio State that I hadn't seen all year, kind of a whiny, oh, woe is me. Oh, I'm so disappointed that I didn't get this call or whatever. It just seemed like maybe they didn't show up as prepared to compete as Wisconsin was prepared to compete. But then obviously at halftime, their team, their coaches, whatever, got together and they got it figured out and they cranked it up. And when they did, then obviously the fortunes of the outcome of the game changed as well.
That's true. Although you'll recall, I believe the second or the third quarter started with Wisconsin getting the ball. They didn't really do
Yep.
much. They punted. Then Ohio
Right.
State got the ball, went 3-and-out or close to it,
Yep.
and were punting on
Yep.
4th and 10. It was a long punt on their own 20 or 30 yard line. And
Right.
Ryan Day goes for the fake and throws the ball and gets a first down and more. And
Right.
that really shocked everybody and gave them a bunch of energy. And then they drive down and score a touchdown there.
Score. Right.
And that
Yep.
was, to me, that was the turning point of the game. Because if they get 3-and-outed there, and then Wisconsin
Oh.
gets the ball and scores and goes up by 21, yeah, we
Oh
might be
yeah.
looking at a different
Oh,
game.
it was absolutely. You are absolutely right that if that does not translate into a first down and they give up positive field position like that to Wisconsin down 14, yeah, things get ugly quick.
So I have to give Ryan Day a lot of credit for having the balls to go for a risky call like that, and
Yeah.
he caught me off guard because I wasn't even looking at the computer, because I was like, okay, they're just punting, and I looked back, I was like, wait, what? So
Yeah, that is crazy. And the downside of that, seriously, if that didn't work, then everybody would be criticizing him for having given up, a chance at a national championship because you didn't trust your defense. So you were willing to risk and basically gift Wisconsin additional points when you're already down by a couple of scores. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's so not in the book, so to speak, of coaching. And that's the thing. That's why it was a surprise. That's partially why it worked. I mean, I'm sure that was the last thing on Wisconsin's mind at that point.
yep. Well, and that's how it goes, right? You're a genius or you're a fool, and you have to
Right.
take
And
that
he was
risk.
this close to being a fool. Yep.
Yeah.
But he turns out to be a genius.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. And like you say, Ohio State just kind of steamrolled from there, and they were able to stuff Jonathan Taylor and
They were.
not let Wisconsin keep that running game going. But you have to give a lot of credit to Paul Chryst and his staff for putting together a game plan that clearly put Ohio State on their back feet for quite a long time.
Yes, I agree. Chris is a hell of a coach.
That's for sure. And then lastly, we have the Clemson Virginia game. I predicted that Clemson would win 42-17. You predicted they would win 52-17. And the final score ended up being 62-17.
Yep. Yep. Well, I kind of had a feeling that Virginia was outclassed in that game, and it kind of played out that way.
It did, although I don't know if you're watching the very beginning of the game, but Virginia got the ball and drove down the field real nicely on them, was getting some long passes and things. And then, of course, they throw a pick right in the end zone, don't get to score. And Clemson gets the ball and scores on 7 plays. But then Virginia gets the ball back and scores right back, also looking good on offense. So it's once again, well, if they scored right away on that first drive, have that momentum, and then they were able to score
Right.
again. Like how does that change the dynamic of the game? That's going to be an interesting one. But once I saw the
Yep.
interception, I kind of knew, and then saw how easily Clemson scored on them in return. It's like, okay, Clemson's going to adjust on defense to this eventually, and Clemson's offense just looks too dominant for them to stop, and that's kind of how it played out.
Right. I agree on that as well. And I mean, Clemson was just the better team. And there's a much like people would be critical of the Big Ten having a disparity between the West and the East. I believe the ACC has that right now in their setup. Um, so
Yeah.
that's why Clemson can be so dominant. Although I was glad that Wisconsin, although they lost, acquitted themselves quite well and conveyed that certainly there are teams in the Big Ten West that are every bit capable of putting a scare in the best team in the East.
I totally agree. And in the ACC, I don't even think it's so much the divisions as much as it is that Clemson's just head and shoulders above everybody else in that league.
They really are. Yeah.
Yeah. And and I know the ACC is way better in other sports like basketball and things like that, but just in football, it feels like nobody really talks about them that much.
Right. Except for Clemson.
Except for Clemson. And this was one thing that I saw in a couple of the games, with the commentators talking, and I don't know if this kind of started bothering you, but it's like when I think it was when Oklahoma beat Baylor, and they were saying, well, Oklahoma is almost certainly in the playoff now, barring Georgia upsetting LSU, and then they kind of were saying similar things about when Wisconsin was up against Ohio State,
Beating Ohio State.
right?
Right.
Like it didn't even matter. Like even if Wisconsin beat Ohio State would still get in. Or in the case of the other game, that Georgia would have gotten in
right.
over,
Yep.
or sorry, not Georgia, but LSU rather would have gotten in over Oklahoma.
Right.
And that kind of goes back to the whole, well, if you lost in your conference championship game and these guys won, even if they have one more loss on their schedule or whatever, I feel like you have to give the nod to the conference champion winner.
Right. Right. And I'm okay with giving a nod to the conference champion. I've been promoting and advocating that as being as it should be a very important factor. But what happens is when you let somebody who's the loser of the conference championship game back into something, or someone who didn't even play in it, i.e., the Alabama scenario, which is really hard to comprehend and accept. So it played out nicely for the decision makers this year. That's the bottom line. That's the good news.
That's true. Yeah. It's less interesting, I suppose, because everybody could kind of predict how it was going to go. But at the same time, there's not as many hard feelings because it's pretty clear with how it played out who should have been the top four. So there won't be as many arguments about it.
No, I don't think so.
Yep. And so, as a result of that, our final four is number 1, LSU, number 2, Ohio State, number 3, Clemson, and number 4, Oklahoma. Now, it's worth noting that we gave predictions on that last time, and I said LSU 1, OSU 2, Clemson 3, Baylor 4, thinking that Baylor would beat Oklahoma, whereas you said 1 Ohio State, 2 LSU, 3 Clemson, 4 Oklahoma. So I was wrong on the Baylor thing, but I was right that LSU would pass Ohio State to get number 1.
Yes, right, and that did play out. And like we said off the air, we were talking about how significant that is because of the matchups, right? Who's got to play who?
Yep. Well, and it was kind of an ironic situation where I feel like I'd almost rather be ranked 2 than 1 because 2 has to play against, or I guess you just basically you don't want to play Clemson was the bottom line.
Right, and Clemson's 3, so in this case it's Ohio State against Clemson.
Yep.
And then LSU gets to play Oklahoma.
Yep.
And so in this case, having that number 1 seed was really a big deal Because even if, let's say, Ohio State were to be able to beat Clemson, I suspect that game is going to take more of a physical and mental toll on Ohio State during that game than what LSU might have to expend against Oklahoma. I believe that if LSU plays one of their best games and Oklahoma plays one of their best games, so it's best game or near best game to near best game, LSU still a 2 to 3 touchdown better team, in my opinion. Whereas I don't believe you can say that between Ohio State and Clemson. I think that's a really, really incredible matchup.
Yep, no, that would be a fun one to watch for sure. I Now it's hard to say because Clemson hasn't played a particularly difficult schedule, and Ohio State will be by far the toughest team they've played all year. But at the same time, with Clemson's experience in the playoff and how they seem to get better every game as they play, so they're playing their best football at the end of the season, and how good Trevor Lawrence looked in that game against Virginia, I have a sneaking suspicion that Clemson could blow it up against Ohio State.
I would agree on all of that too, I think.
Yep. Well, there you go. Yeah, I think it's pretty clear to me right now, just from the eye test of watching those games, that LSU and Clemson are the two best teams. The Joe Burrows in the LSU Georgia game. Which I guess we didn't even talk about that, did we? We're gonna have to get to that conference championship game, but he cemented his position for the Heisman for sure. I think he played really well in that game.
He did. He played very well and just great decisions, physical. I mean, his ability to get the ball exactly where it needed to be was really impressive.
Yeah, and one other thing I kind of noticed was that, like, you probably saw the clip where he threw that pass into the end zone and he started walking towards the sideline before the play even ended because he knew it was over. And you didn't see him celebrating or getting super energetic. He seems like a kind of calm, focused quarterback.
Yes, his maturity definitely shows.
Yes, for sure. But yes, that is kind of bad of me. Let's go to that SEC championship game.
I don't mind you ignoring the SEC. That's all good with me.
Hey, Mo, it was a good game to watch, though. LSU. I predicted that LSU would win 45-38, whereas you predicted they would win 35-28, and the final score ended up being 37-10. So more skewed than either of us were thinking.
Right.
Though I will say, in defense of Georgia, their quarterback also threw some really nice balls, and sometimes his receivers just flat out dropped them.
Right.
Yeah,
it's true.
Which I'm sure
he was frustrated. You could tell.
Oh yeah. Well, and the commentators were mentioning that the biggest difference between last year and this year is that they lost a lot of their experienced receivers.
Mm-hmm.
And you could see how that was hindering them. And Georgia's got this amazing rush defense, and LSU really wasn't able to rush the ball at all against them, with the exception of Joe Burrows getting some runs,
scrambling
out of the pocket and things like that. But they were just throwing it all over the place on them. Their secondary couldn't keep up, and then Georgia's offense was just so anemic, and they missed so many field goals. It just wasn't happening for them.
Yep, I agree. Not complete football team.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that game wasn't. It started off very interesting, but LSU kind of pulled away as it went along.
Right. I would argue in past years, maybe not so much this, but in past years that was Oklahoma's issue. Even when they got into this playoff, man, you cannot ultimately win one of these college football playoff scenarios unless you are a complete team. And when I say complete, I mean all three phases. You need to be at least very good in all three phases, and maybe exceptional in one, right? But you've got to be very good in all of them. You've got to be good defensively. You've got to be good in special teams, all types of special teams. Because if you have a weakness in any of those three areas, I'm sorry, you're going to run into a team that is more complete than you. And even if you're better than them on one, like you have a spectacular offense, if the other team is good on offense or very good on offense, very good on defense, and very good on special teams, then they'll find a way to beat you.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's definitely true. Which is kind of nice. Like I saw somebody commenting that, if we were in the old BCS system, it would be LSU versus Ohio State, for 1 and 2 for the championship game, and
Right.
Clemson would be totally left out, even though there's an argument to say that they're the best team in the country right now. So having the 4 teams gives everybody that chance to play, and like you say, having to play 2 games in a row against such elite talent like that is a real challenge.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see. We don't have an Alabama this time, but
Right.
with Clemson having all that experience in the playoff, how does that kind of play into it? Like with their mentality versus, say, LSU,
Ohio State.
who has or Ohio State, who haven't been in a while.
Right. Well, in Ohio State, it's got a brand new first year head coach. It's got a brand new young quarterback who transferred. Think about that. Now, where did he transfer? Did he transfer from Clemson or did he? No, he
No,
transferred from Georgia.
yeah,
Fields was from Georgia. Yeah. So I mean, he started his career in the SEC. So very interesting uh, dynamics there with the Ohio State club because they just literally last year they were horrible defensively at times,
right.
and now this year they're a whole different football team.
It's true. It's true. Well, like you say, I mean, we almost beat them last year.
Right.
So
Right.
that goes to
Exactly.
show you. Um, One interesting thing I noticed just looking through the bowl games and the timings and everything is that the semifinals are both on Saturday, the 28th of December, and then the actual
Yes.
national championship game is until the 13th of January, a full 2 weeks later.
Yeah, and I don't understand why they did that. I don't know what the circumstances was, but I think that's going to be awful. I think that's way too much time for those players. It extends the season so much, and those guys are going to get tired of preparing. Um, and if you're a team that does really well in that semifinal game, I guarantee you, most of those coaches and players would like to just go ahead and play again another week later. They don't want a bye week at that point in the season. They want to get to it.
Right. But I was thinking about that when you were talking about the fact that whoever wins that Clemson Ohio State game will probably be more beat up than whoever wins the LSU Oklahoma game. But if they
True.
both teams have 2 weeks to kind of heal up and prep, then that kind of mitigates that a little bit.
You're right about that. I didn't know that they didn't do it in a 2 week thing. I wonder what caused that.
Yeah, it must be some sort of scheduling thing. Like there's something on that first week of January or something.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy. I think that's a big deal, and I think they're going to find that's too much time.
All right. Well, so as we said, we've got Ohio State Clemson in the Fiesta Bowl, and then Oklahoma LSU in the Peach Bowl for our 2 semifinals. So I know you're of the opinion that Ohio State is going to beat Clemson. So why don't you tell me your reasoning behind that decision?
Well, I believe Ohio State's a very complete football team. Getting back to something I was just talking about, they have great kicking game. They have very good wide receivers. They have a quarterback who's playing at a very high level and who's athletic enough that he can really punish you if you are not, tuned in to his legs and his ability to get not just first downs but get big chunks of yardage when he needs to, and then defensively they have just difference makers along the defensive line. In their secondary, they're swallowing people up. It's really a tremendously talented, balanced football team. Now, Clemson, I think, at times looked very pedestrian offensively, like they weren't quite as in sync. I will concede that they've looked better recently. And then defensively, Clemson is very good, but they're not as good as they were last year. They lost a number of defensive linemen and stuff like that from last year's squad. And so I just wonder if they are as complete of a football team as Ohio State. That's why I'm inclined to believe Ohio State has the advantage in that matchup.
Interesting. One point that I'll make is that while I agree with you that Ohio State is a very complete football team, I think the first half of the Wisconsin game shows some of the weaknesses in their scheme, especially if Clemson can get a running game going alongside their already terrific passing game.
Yeah.
Ohio State's shown some weakness there. And
Yeah,
then
and that just showed up. I didn't see that from Ohio State until this game.
Very true. And then also, Fields, their quarterback, is playing injured currently. Now he'll have time to heal up on that, obviously, before the big game. But if if he gets hit a couple times, right in that leg, I could see him going out. In which case, I would significantly lower Ohio State's chances.
Oh, I would agree. I would totally agree. I think it's very important that he be fully functional.
Indeed, along with the fact that I think that Clemson's offense, since the Louisville game, they've really started to get their offense going. Trevor Lawrence has been playing better, more like he was in that spectacular performance against Alabama last year. So I think that's just going to prove to be too much.
I would agree.
So I'm going to predict that Clemson's going to win, and I'm going to say that the score will be, I'll say 38 Clemson. And for Ohio State, let's say 31.
So Ohio State 31. What was Clemson's
38.
score? Wow. Okay, so you're thinking pretty high scoring.
Yep.
Well, I guess I kind of see that. You're pushing me to make this choice, huh? I'm going to say that you're on to something. But I think it's going to be the reverse. I think Ohio State wins.
Okay. So 38-31 Ohio State. Well, we'll see.
Yep.
We'll see who wins that one.
It might be lower scoring than that too. That's pushing the outer limits of scoring, because I think in a lot of these championship type games like this, oftentimes they spend the first quarter kind of feeling each other out and kind of exchanging blows, if you will. So that might happen in this, in which case it might end up being 28-21. But I'll go with the 38-31 you stated, because things can get crazy late in those games too.
Yeah, that's the thing with these. All of these teams have these quarterbacks who are amazing throwers, but also have that athleticism.
Right.
And
hard to stop.
Yep, and so many of them are these quarterbacks who just transferred in just this past year or two. It's just like how that's become such a thing at this top level of college football.
Yep.
And then, of course, there's the Oklahoma LSU game. I think we're both going to agree that LSU is the definite favorite. Like you said, even if they both play very well, LSU's very well is still 2 or 3 touchdowns better than Oklahoma's very well.
I believe that's true. Yep, I do. And so Oklahoma would need to play at a very high level, and LSU would need to play a little less than their best, like uncharacteristic turnovers, bad decisions, and then shorten the game so that LSU doesn't have chances to get their shit together and come back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that, but I think that as long as Joe Burrows is playing well and hitting his receivers, as we saw in that game against Georgia, I think it's going to be really hard, even for Oklahoma with their good offense, to be able to outscore that LSU team.
Right, I agree.
All right. So what's your prediction for score then?
I'm going to go higher on this one. I'm going to say LSU 48 and 28 for Oklahoma.
All right. I'll go ahead and go a little lower. I'll say that it's 42 Clemson, or LSU.
LSU, yep.
Yeah, 42 LSU. And then let's say, 24 Oklahoma.
Okay.
All right. So that's all that. But then, of course, we've also got the other bowl games and things to look forward to for this postseason. In terms of the rest of the rankings, we have obviously the top four. Then 5 is Georgia, 6 Oregon, 7 Baylor, 8 Wisconsin, 9 Florida, 10 Penn State. So that's how the rankings have working out. Utah fell a lot down to 11th, which isn't surprising given their pretty bad beatdown by Oregon.
Right.
So that's led to some interesting matchups in the big bowl games. We've got Georgia and Baylor in the Sugar Bowl, Oregon, Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl, Alabama, Michigan in the Citrus Bowl, which will be interesting.
Yes.
And Penn State, Memphis in the Cotton Bowl.
Wow. Penn State, Memphis.
Yep.
How did that Memphis Penn State game happen? How did that play out? What was Memphis ranked? Were they in that?
They're 17th. And they
17th.
won their conference. They beat Cincinnati 29-24 this past weekend.
Man, wow.
Yeah.
Maybe they're better than I think, but my initial reaction to that is that's good for Penn State.
Yeah. Well, and their coach is the one that's going to Florida State, Mike Norvell.
Oh, you mean Memphis's coach?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, that's never a good thing either. So I'm wondering, is he staying to coach in the bowl game, or is he's probably going immediately to Florida State?
He's probably going immediately. I didn't see what the result there was. And then lastly, there's the Orange Bowl with Florida playing against Virginia.
Yes.
Which
now, again, I just don't think Virginia is much of a team, and maybe part of that is because they just got undressed by Clemson, but I just don't think they're that good. So that's a great draw for Florida.
Yeah, I would agree. It kind of goes into the weakness of the ACC again.
Yep.
And then interesting Big Ten matchups for us. Iowa plays against USC in the Holiday Bowl, and Minnesota plays against Auburn in the Outback Bowl. So those will be some interesting matchups as well.
Yeah, they will. And I'm really curious. I hope Minnesota shows up because if they don't, that could be an embarrassing game for them. I believe they will because they got a lot of seniors and they got a lot to play for. But Auburn just beat Alabama, right? So
that's true. Yep, they're playing with a chip on their shoulder here at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Of course, the interesting one for us coming from Michigan is the fact that Michigan's the one that drew the Alabama stick, who gets to play against the 2-loss Alabama team.
Right.
Now, that will be an interesting thing to see. This is our time where we'll see probably players choosing to sit out of the bowl games for the sake of the draft and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
And especially for Alabama, given that their guys were expecting to play in the playoff and that playing in this bowl game is a disappointment for them. I bet you'll see quite a number of players choosing to sit out of that game.
I would agree. And I think that Michigan has to take advantage of that situation and ultimately end up, coming away with a victory, because that could be a great positive momentum for their program. Versus, Alabama, looking at it and, like you say, playing from a degree of disappointment. If Michigan still loses this, I think that speaks negatively to Michigan's, prospects, and really you got to take your hat off to Nick Saban. I think Nick Saban's going to coach as hard for this game because he's not going to let his team play the victim in this.
Right. Well, yeah, he's going to be saying the right things in that locker room and pushing them hard and everything.
Right.
But yeah, it'll be an interesting opportunity for Michigan, because if Michigan could find it in them to beat Alabama, and have them have a 3-loss
That's a calling card, man. That's a big deal.
Yep, yep. Kind of ironic if Harbaugh has all these losses to Ohio State, but he's managed to beat
Yeah,
Alabama.
yeah, that's true.
That would be interesting. Um, Quick question on that front. What do you think of these? And of course, people kind of love to jump to conclusions, so I don't agree with this entirely. But this idea that Alabama is kind of on a downturn, with like how elite their defense used to be and how many points they gave up against LSU and Auburn, and not being able to beat anybody ranked on their schedule this year. Um, do you think that we may have reached, a low point in this kind of dynasty of Alabama that we've been in this decade, or do you think that Saban will bounce back just as strong next year?
Well, I would say this that Saban has instituted structurally a program that ensures that he's going to always recruit at an extremely high level, like top five level every year. So that means that and not only is he going to recruit at that high level, but he's going to do a better job of evaluating the coaches, even the premier programs. So I never question Nick's ability to surround himself with enough talent to win championships every year. The issue is he's struggled in recent years because of staff turnover and losing a lot of not just coaches, but coordinators to various coaching opportunities and people just getting worn down by the Nick Saban intensity and leaving a good situation at Alabama to pursue other interests because they just don't want it's not worth it to them to coach under that environment. So Nick's own reputation of being a micromanaging detail nut is worked against him a little bit. So the question becomes: is Nick and his staff simply not as talented of a coaching group as what he's had in the past? And so he needs to make some changes to get himself back up to snuff, or is it just simply a matter of ebb and flow in the talent, and next year they're going to be right back in it, and competing for championship. Um, I'm inclined to believe that right now you got to give Nick the benefit of the doubt and say that's just a blip. But if we continue to see this for say the next year or two, where he's not even making the conference championship, because if you look going forward, yes, LSU's losing Joe Burrow, and they don't have another one of those guys, so LSU takes a step back next year. But Georgia is still a young football team and is probably going to be better next year, right? Auburn beat them this year and seemed to be a moderately young football team, so they're going to be in the hunt. A&M is going to be better next year. So there's some Florida has been very talented, and if it wasn't for some injuries to their quarterback spot, might have made some more noise. So all of a sudden, there's some other teams in the SEC that are starting to get their shit together, and that could make it harder for Alabama to get through to that.
Yeah, yeah. And another factor I know is that they had some major injuries throughout the season this year, more so than usual. Now, obviously, their extreme talent and depth means that hurts them less than a lot of other teams, but it still is a factor for sure.
Yep, I would agree.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and predict in this Michigan Alabama game in the Citrus Bowl that Alabama wins, but I think that through that combination of Alabama losing talent to the draft and not playing with a lot of heart because they don't really want to be there, whereas Michigan has everything to win, nothing to lose, basically, and it's the opposite for Alabama. So I think they'll play hard and they'll play them close, but Alabama will win in the end. So I'm going to go ahead and predict that Alabama wins 38 to Michigan's 31.
Okay. Well, I'm going to flip on that. I'm going to say Michigan wins because Alabama mails it in to a certain degree and has a number of players who choose not to play and prepare for the draft and all that. So I think a combination of those kinds of decisions and that kind of a mentality lends itself to Michigan being the team that wants to be there more, and Michigan has enough talent to really do that. And keep in mind that the Michigan quarterback, okay, was a SEC quarterback first and transferred to Michigan. So his desire to beat Alabama is going to be very high. And so, given that he's a senior and and he wants this probably as bad as anybody on the entire roster, I have a feeling he's going to play very well. So I'm going to predict a close but victory for the Wolverines and say 28-24.
28-24. All right. I didn't know that about their quarterback. That is an interesting wrinkle.
Yeah,
That could
yeah,
be fun.
he was the quarterback at Ole Miss.
All right. And then what about the Rose Bowl, Oregon, Wisconsin? Um,
I think that that's one of the few matchups in general. Like I was saying, I don't love the all the Big Ten matchups, especially the matchups with the SEC. It's like every time the Big Ten is matched up with an SEC in a bowl game, it seems like we're getting the team that's a notch better on the pecking order than what it should be if you wanted apples to apples comparisons of the two conferences. But this is not one of those circumstances out there at the Rose Bowl. I think Wisconsin is a pretty damn good football team. I think they're going to be able to shut down Oregon and 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 make them less than 2 dimensional. Let's just say. I won't say they'll just be 1 dimensional, but it's just going to be more of a struggle for them. And then Wisconsin, they're going to line up and play smash mouth, and Jonathan Taylor is going to go out in style and have a huge game, and Wisconsin wins it. How bad? I think it'd be pretty good. So I'm going to say 2 touchdowns. So let's go. What would that be? 42 minus 42, 28.
42-28. All
Is
right.
that is that right? Is that yeah? That's 14 points. 42-28.
All right. Cool. I also think that Wisconsin is going to win. I think they showed themselves well against Ohio State, even though they lost. And I don't think Oregon is used to playing a team as physical and power football focused as Wisconsin. Um, so I think that might catch them off guard. So I'm gonna also predict Wisconsin victory, but I'll go a little lower scoring. I'll say it'll be let's do what would that be? 31 Wisconsin to 21 Oregon.
That sounds good.
All right. And then last prediction Georgia versus Baylor in the Sugar Bowl. I think this will be an interesting matchup because clearly, like we said, Georgia is not a complete football team. They have some serious kind of holes. But they're still also very talented, and like I said, if their receivers can actually catch the ball, then they can get some big plays off too. But Baylor is also capable of those big plays with their quarterback. So, what do you think of this matchup?
Well, I'm inclined. I mean, obviously Baylor competed well against Oklahoma, right? So you got to give them credit for how they compete. But we also watched them collapse against Oklahoma the first time they played. So, I would lean the other way, I think, um, and go with Georgia in this case. I have a feeling that the extra practices are going to be very kind to Georgia, getting people healthy and getting people repped the way they want them to. And I just think Georgia's a team with more talent, and that eventually shows up.
All right. Hmm. Well, I'm considering going with Baylor again for the upset, but I went for that last time and it didn't work. So I'm second guessing myself here.
Well, I didn't give you a number either, so I don't know. I'm going to say 28-21. Um, Georgia beats Baylor.
All right. Interesting. All right. I'll go ahead and predict that Georgia wins, but I'm going to predict higher scoring than that. So I'm going to go with let's say 35 Georgia and 32 Baylor. I think it'll be a close game.
Okay, that sounds good. And I could see scenarios where Georgia, really emerges, right? And then at some point in the game, it kind of gets away from Baylor, and the end is done. But until those games play out, it's really hard to predict on bowl games.
That's true. And then the last thing we'll mention, we'll save the coaching discussion for our next podcast, I think. But of course, coming up this weekend, the only game of this week is the Army-Navy game, the Classic. It looks like Navy has a significantly better record than Army this year, so I'm not sure how entertaining the game itself will be, but it's always just a great event in general.
Yes, the ambiance and pomp and circumstance. I'm excited to go see that game someday in the near future.
Yeah, that would be a fun one. That's a good bucket list.
Yeah, it is on my bucket list.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, this is fun. It's a bummer that we're close to the end of the season, but we'll be together for Christmas back in Traverse City. So we'll be able to watch many of these games together. And we'll we'll definitely do a podcast after the semifinal games for sure. Potentially we might do one on these the coaching carousel, although I don't think there's been anything crazy enough to really warrant its own podcast per se.
Right. On that Navy Army game, before we get too far away from that, I'm going to pick Navy. Navy had a dominant stretch with them, and then Army's won the last two or three. But I think Navy rights the ship, so to speak, and gets back on the top there. And the other reason I'm kind of rooting for Navy is the guy who was the commandant of the Naval Academy for like the last 5 years is a finalist to become the new president of the University of Nebraska. So I am hopeful that he gets that job, because I've never met a military academy person that I wasn't favorably impressed by, and if that's his background in tie, and he's a Navy midshipman, then by golly, I'm going to be a Navy fan.
All right. I like it. And like I said, I think that not having watched any of their games really, but just looking at the record, it seems like Navy has got this one in the bag this time. Well,
there's no such thing as in the bag in that rivalry, though. I'll tell you that. It'll be hard fought no matter what.
That's true. If there's one game they all come there to play for, it's got to be that one.
It's that one. Absolutely.
Yep. All right. So I guess it's time to wrap up this podcast. We'll look forward to all these exciting bowl games, and of course, we'll give our predictions on the national championship game once we have the results from the semifinal and all of that. Hopefully, we're in for some great football to end off the year.
Absolutely, and we can hopefully be looking optimistically to an improved Nebraska team for next year. Maybe we'll get some positive recruiting news between now and signing days.
That's right. So if you all enjoyed listening to this podcast out there, you can reach us online at huskerpete13@gmail.com. If you want to email us, you can search for College Football Throwdown on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. Leave us a comment and a rating. Let us know what you think of the podcast, how we can improve. We always love hearing back from the fans. So thank you all out there for listening, and thank you for hosting with me today, Dad.
Absolutely.
And until next time, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.